Hello and welcome to my channel. First, I want to take a second to pause real quick and let you know that this channel is where I'm going to be going and documenting my journey through learning art, and I'm going to start learning to draw first and then moving into digital drawing and then animation. So these are going to be big, long videos, but they'll probably be broken up into parts where you can watch me take my first few steps in learning how to draw. With that being said, I hope you enjoy the rest of the video, and we'll resume it. So, the first step I'm doing is I'm following along a course called Brad's Art School, which is a channel that I am using to learn art. So, the basis of what I'm doing here is there's three basic shapes in the world that you can decompose anything into, which are circles, squares, and triangles. So what I'm doing right here is learning to draw straight lines, because for squares and triangles, you're going to need to know how to draw straight lines. So that's what we're going to be practicing first, and then after we learn how to draw straight lines, we're going to start drawing triangles and squares. So what we're doing is making two dots and trying to move your arm instead of moving your wrist to draw a straight line. So these are the first few I'm doing right here, and one thing that I now realize is the main thing you want to learn is to move your arm and not just your wrist. And one thing I feel like I was doing here that I feel like could be corrected is that one I did pretty slow, and I just did it like you normally draw a line, where I just moved it across and didn't focus on drawing it straight. I moved it across slowly. This is like a quick, fast line, but you try to make a good straight one. So this one, what I feel like I could have done a lot better in this is focusing on keeping my hand above the paper, because I was just leaving my hand on the paper instead of, that was one of my favorite ones right there. I thought that was a really nice straight line. I feel like with focus keeping your hand a little bit above the paper and drawing a line, as opposed to keeping your hand on the paper and just using the paper to guide you, because if you just do that, then it's going to be a little bit more sloppy in my opinion. So yeah, the first step to drawing good squares and triangles is drawing good lines, and that's what I'm practicing here. And looking back at these are actually a lot better than I thought of when I originally drew them. You see, I feel like what I'm doing is I'm trying too much to focus on hitting that dot, which ideally when you get to be great at drawing, you're going to want to be able to make two dots to draw a perfect line in between them. But right now, what I'm doing, I feel like, is I'm focusing too much on making perfect lines straight from the dot to the other dot. And I'm getting a little bit off course with my hand and then trying to steer back on course and hit the dot, which is in turn making a wobbly looking line. I feel like if I would have just kept with straight lines and not worried that much about hitting the dot and just aiming in its general direction, I would have had a little bit better success with that. So if you're practicing this, like I suggest, if you're practicing this, I would suggest to draw straight lines and not worry too much about the dot. Have that be your target. That was a bad one right there. See, don't focus so much on hitting the target. Focus on hitting, this is like a bullseye, and focus on hitting the target and not the bullseye. Kind of like in baseball, where if you're playing first, second, or third base, and you're being thrown the ball, your main goal is to catch the ball. Now, it's good if you catch the ball while you're on the base, but don't try to stay on the base and miss the ball. your main goal is to catch the ball, and if you end up being able to stay on base, then that's a plus. But you want to first and foremost think about catching the ball. So first and foremost, think about drawing a straight line. In this case, think about drawing a straight line in the general direction of the dot. Doesn't have to be exactly on the dot. I feel like that's just some advice that I would give, as that I'm not a professional drawer. That's what I hope to be, or a professional artist. So that was a pretty nice line right there. A professional artist is not what I am right now. It's what I hope to become. And just as someone who's practiced drawing these lines, I suggest that you try to focus mainly on making a straight line as opposed to just hitting the dots. Not sure what I'm doing right here. Yeah, that one, again, I'm wiggling my hand and trying to aim too much on the dot. There's these little micro things your hand moves, and sometimes they just can't be helped, and you just have to make the best of it. And if you make a wobbly line if you make a straight line that misses the target, it looks a lot better than a wobbly line that does hit the target. Yeah, I was pointing out the best lines I feel like I did. That was a really straight one right there. And that one right there. See, the best one I believe I'm going to point at right there, or make a line at. It didn't exactly hit the target, but it got in the general direction, and it was pretty straight. Oops, right here I accidentally spilled some water on my paper right there. I was doing this on normal printer paper, and I bought a sketchbook, but I didn't want to waste the good, nice paper of the sketchbook until I learned how to draw pretty well. So I just flipped to the back of it, and I'm using the hard cardboard piece at the end to draw on. And I'm just putting printer paper in here. And for this learning bit of drawing, all you need is a pen, pencil, any type of drawing thing, and a piece of paper. That's really all you need to start learning. Yeah, I just made a little spill. It got a little cardboard a little bit wet, but it dried up, and it looks pretty fine now. Okay, now I believe I'm going to start drawing squares. Now that you've practiced and you've learned how to draw your lines, you need to learn how to draw squares now. So we're just going to use the lines to draw our squares. So we're going to make 4 points with a pencil. We're just going to make 4 points in a square-shaped pattern, and then we're going to connect them with our lines. That was a pretty nice one right there. See, it did bend off about halfway through, and yep, that was a pretty straight line right there. And again, it didn't hit the exact dot, and this is where it is more important that you need to hit where you're drawing, because if you're drawing something, you can't just settle for, and that's close enough. But for practicing, it's okay. So ideally, you want to practice enough to where you can make sure you hit perfect dots next time when you're actually drawing. Looks like my baseball cap's getting in the way. So that one, the line didn't make it all the way to there, and it kind of stopped, and it got to be pretty bad right when it was about to hit the dot. See, that was a nice line, and it overshot a little, but that's okay. So generally, if you overshoot it, it's better to overshoot than undershoot, because you can always erase. But as you can see on that first line, it looks worse when you undershoot and then have to make a square that the line doesn't really have the best thing. Okay, now I'll learn not to wear a baseball cap while I'm recording myself drawing this. I decided to try to make a little tiny square to see if that would make it any easier to draw it, and it actually made it quite a bit harder. I'm sure like an enormous square would be harder to draw than a smaller size square, but that little teeny tiny square, it wasn't really too much easier. And sometimes the squares might not look the best, even if you draw really straight lines, if your dots aren't like, yeah, this is the point where my hands were starting to hurt, because I'm not used to drawing. I'm sure that most new artists, when they're not used to drawing, their hands kind of like, it doesn't like hurt, it just, your hands are kind of like sore and a bit achy. Happened a couple times during this, but again, even if you draw perfect lines and you don't make the dots to make it look like a square, it looks a lot worse. See, that one, it missed the dot a lot, and that one really doesn't look exactly like a square. So that's, you can, in practice, try to draw, and in this practice, you can draw, and it might not look the best, and you can just say it's practice, but it actually makes your squares not really look, or squares, triangles, any shape, not look the best if you don't really make the outline to them where it's gonna look good no matter what. And again, I am just someone who's learning, and I have more experience than someone who's never done this before. So don't take anything I say in this as like, this is hard fact, that's professional artist. That's what I want. That's what I'm striving to become. That's why I named the channel Draw to Learn, as opposed to, it was kind of like a mimicking like learn to draw, but you're drawing to learn drawing instead of learning to draw. It's just kind of like you might get it, you might not get it, just something that I thought fit in with what I'm doing right here. Again, my hands get a little sore every now and again. see that square, it's got a smaller bottom than it does top. So even if I make these lines as straight could be, they're not gonna look like a perfect square. It's always gonna look a little bit worse. That being said, that bottom line and top line are pretty straight. There's a little bit of a wiggle at the end of that. Probably I didn't finish that line. And see that one, that was that bottom line. That was a pretty nice line right there. But that top one, or right now is the right one, is a little bit wonky at the end. It kind of curved to try to hit the dot. Otherwise, it would have not looked anything like a square. Yeah, and this one, I was really like trying to find a way to make a good outline of a square. That way my lines would make the square actually look good. So I was trying to use a ruler to like make some way where I could do it, but I didn't really find it was. I would have had to like have a compass, and it probably wouldn't have worked. Maybe not, but I'm sure there is a way. Just I thought I'll just do it like this. That was a pretty off line right there. But yeah, again, like you have to have a good outline, and that's true in like anything in general. You have to have a good outline before you can fill it in. If you don't have a good outline, you don't have a good inline. Well, that 8 didn't look pretty good. From this angle, it kind of looks like a Pringle. I put the dot above the 6 kind of to like distinguish it. Generally, the dots on like Uno cards or lines or anything is under it, but I didn't really have any room to put it under the 6, so I thought I would just put it above it. Here I was trying to do more of a rectangle type shape, which, like, when you say everything can be decomposed into squares and rectangles, shapes with 4 sides. And see, again, I put that 9 on the top right there. There doesn't look like a 9. Well, actually, from this angle, if you turn it a bit, it kind of does look like a musical note with a hold on it. Yeah, at this point my hands were getting pretty sore and I just wanted to move on to triangles and get rid of squares, so I thought I'd like make one big square to get done with it. Yeah, that one messed it up. Again, when you're drawing longer lines, it's a lot easier to mess something up. That's a pretty good line right there. That one kind of curved up a little bit. That one was a pretty straight line. If you would have tilted the angle a bit, it would have just looked better though. And again, I tried to draw these numbers a little bit better because I don't have the best handwriting. I thought if I learned to draw, I might have better handwriting too. I also did a dot in the 0 because it was so big. I felt like it needed something in there, but I feel like generally it's more common for zeros to have a line through them instead of a dot. See, you can tell where that one tapered off when my hand kind of got... And at this point, I was trying more to keep my hand above the paper as opposed to below it, I believe. And that's when I I don't finish the line, and it does like that is when I kind of accidentally drop my hand and it kind of grips on the paper and makes it kind of look like that. And I'm sure if I practice it more, my hands won't start to hurt as much, but my hands were starting to just get sore after this. That one doesn't really look like the best shape, the best square. It is more rectangle, but again, these don't have to be perfect squares that you're drawing. You can choose to draw more abstract squares, more rectangle-like, more diamond-like. Though that top curve is pretty curvy right there. That looks... And I believe that is it. Thank you for joining me with this video. And this is the first part of the drawing session. Next video will be out, and I'll link it right here. It'll be about triangles, and you can click it right here. How to draw with triangles. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. Bye.